Greetings, Colombo, and welcome back to yet another episode of High Exclusive, where we're sitting down today with Raveen Kariyawasam. At 22, he has secured a Rhodes Scholarship, one of the most highly competitive and prestigious scholarships in the world, dating back all the way to 1902. Raveen, welcome to the show. Let's start off a little bit by telling us a bit about your educational journey throughout, where you schooled before and how you came to achieve the scholarship.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me, Anuki. It's an absolute pleasure being here. One of my wildest dreams checked off the bucket list. So starting off, I did most of my schooling at CIS. Ever since I was a 3-year-old, wide-eyed toddler all the way until I did my A-levels, freaking out about where I'm going to end up. Luckily, right after my schooling, I was able to land a place at an Ivy League institution. I was able to go to the University of Pennsylvania. Some of the notable alumni include Donald Trump, a very controversial figure, Elon Musk, yet another controversial figure, and John Scully, one of the world's biggest marketing wizards of all time. When I was at the University of Pennsylvania, I did my Bachelor of Science in Engineering in Bioengineering. From there, I also did a second bachelor's degree in Finance and Entrepreneurship at the world-renowned the Wharton School, considered to be the best business school at the moment. And then right after that, I did my master's also at the University of Pennsylvania. This time, I focused more on the computational medicine aspect and the medical device aspect within bioengineering.
So for those who are actually wondering about this scholarship, based on your own road to achieving it, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah.
And has there been any other Sri Lankan who's, or are you the first?
So for the uninitiated, the Rhodes Scholarship is the oldest graduate study scholarship that's available, and once you get it, you are granted a place to study at the University of Oxford for all the way up to 4 years, depending on what course you study. It was started in 1902. And I believe the last most prominent Sri Lankan who's gotten it was G.L. Pierce, and there has been, I think, close to a 52 or 53 year hiatus before it has come back home to the motherland. So in terms of advice, it's honestly like one of those things. It's almost like winning the lottery, but that doesn't mean you gotta give up, when I was applying, I thought I was not qualified. I thought I didn't have enough credits. I thought I didn't have enough extracurriculars, and I was freaking out telling my professors all of this, and they were like, oh, well, Raveen, if you think about it, for all the opportunities you say no to, you automatically get disqualified. So just take the chance, just do it, and that's just life, If it's meant to be, it'll fall into place, and that's the advice I have. No matter how high of a dream you might have, never forget that if it's meant to be, it'll fall into place. So just say yes, take the chance. You never know.
In other words, don't underestimate yourself.
Bingo.
And how did you react to the news of you receiving the scholarship? I mean, did you already know you had it in the bag, or was it a complete surprise?
Well, as you mentioned previously, the Rhodes Scholarship is one of the hardest, if not the most exclusive scholarships that's available for anyone around the world. And to kind of give you the breakdown, it's usually broken into constituents. So even though there are 100 scholarships, not everyone gets access to the 100 scholarships. It's broken down where 32 of the scholarships are given to American citizens, 5 to China, so on and so forth. But Sri Lanka doesn't have a constituency anymore. So what we do is we compete in this category called the global category, and they only have 2 scholarships. And we're competing with 150 plus countries for 2 places. So no, I did not have it in the bag. It took a lot of tears and a lot of sweat and a lot of me being on pins, hoping and praying that this thing pulls through. And I still can't believe that we're on the other side of this journey. I still pinch myself and wonder what's happening. But I guess it's not a dream, right, Anuki?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, for me, it's more of not even a dream. But talking about your dual degree, so finance and entrepreneurship, as well as bioengineering with concentrations in computational science and medical devices. How do these two kind of go in hand, and what made you go down this path?
Yeah, it was money. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, not a bad incentive. Just saying.
I guess it all started out as a kid. I was kind of conflicted. I liked biology and medicine, and I always thought that I'd be a doctor. Like every Asian household would love to have a doctor in the
Sri
family,
Lankan
right?
dream.
Exactly. So right after O-levels, I started shadowing physicians, and then I quickly realized I was more interested in the devices that they used than the actual medical practice that they were following. And the doctors kind of get annoyed when I ask, like, what does the ECG machine do? Like, are you sure it does that? And they're like, we don't know, we just use it. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's when I realized I wanted to be in the medical device side of it. And that's why I chose to do bioengineering. So while I was there at the university first year, just a bioengineering student, I wasn't doing any business. And I asked like one of my professors, like, oh, there's all these really cool tech and research that's happening behind your labs. Why can't I go to a hospital and use it? Like, why can't you sell it at a pharmacy? And then they said, without skipping a beat, Raveen, it's money. You gotta make sure that it makes money and like you can put it out to the world. Because sadly, the dark truth about the world is that it revolves around money. So that's when I was like, okay, so if I have to do good, I kind of have to be a little bit evil, right? Gotta make that money. So that's when I started doing the whole business route and getting into business, understanding how I could build a company that's profitable and get people motivated. So that's the entrepreneurship and innovation side of it. Secondly, how do I attract investors into health tech, which is a really coveted and kind of very closely guarded industry? I wanted to understand how do the investors and the venture capitalists think, like how do they vet their candidates before they fund their startups, right? So that's when I did finance, focusing on venture capital, and that's how the two kind of get married together.
Nice. Okay, so talking about healthcare innovation, there's been significant progress over the last few years. Where do you think the market is lacking, and how do you fill that gap?
Oh, definitely. So I think how I see the healthcare paradigm is that it's kind of broken into two particular categories, in the sense that we have high resource settings, so like the Western world, like America, where they have enough and more money and research happening where they can try out the cutting edge on their patients. And then you have low resource settings, like sadly to say, like Sri Lanka and the Philippines, where we are trying to play catch up with those high resource settings. So I think the best way going forward is that we kind of have to democratize the existing really expensive, highly researched technologies, making them more affordable and accessible either through technology and more novel business strategies and models that kind of make it more viable. The other thing I see where this industry is heading is towards predictive healthcare and personalized healthcare, because you and I, Anuki, even though we share Sri Lankan blood, it is not to say that we are the same person, and like what might ail you might not ail me, and vice versa. So it is important to understand the human body as uniquely it was created, and that's why I think the future should be. So where we're using medicine and technology instead of focusing more on the generalizations of symptoms and of particular diseases, we should start focusing on how a particular disease or ailment manifests in an individual, and then start breaking it apart, seeing how does this individual tick, so that we can give them medicine that's just for them, that we know it's going to work, we can lessen the economic burden on the healthcare system, and make sure everything works out great.
Okay, so I'm curious, preventative healthcare. Now, in terms of technology, we know that it's used to diagnose an ailment, but not necessarily to prevent.
Yeah.
How do you think we can kind of bridge this gap in the future?
Definitely. So, as you know, prevention is obviously easier than the cure. And the reason why we go seek doctors whenever we get sick is that we first wait for a symptom to manifest, Like you have to wait and understand that I have a headache. And that's when you know, okay, something might be wrong and I gotta go see a doctor. You don't know that beforehand, right? So in terms of predictive healthcare, what we're trying to do is we're trying to fundamentally see how your inner workings of your body that you yourself might not be able to detect, but something like a computer or sensor, it can pick up minute things as like, oh shoot, your body temperature went up by 0.1 degrees Celsius and it's consistently happening, or the color of your forehead skin is different, like something's up. So it's okay, Aniki, I don't think I see anything.
I hope so.
It's with these minute changes that devices and computers can pick up, we can start progressing into predictive healthcare where we kind of see the symptoms manifest at a much smaller scale, therefore we can manage them before they exacerbate and get worse. So in terms of how this technology is handling, right now everyone probably is well aware of smartwatches, so Apple's leading the charge here with their Apple Watch detecting heart rate. They do ECG scans on the fly. And also they're rumored to be using body temperature readings going forward. But the Apple Watch right now has successfully prevented multiple cardiac arrest, where it has gone and said, look, your heart is beating at a much faster speed than it usually should when doing this activity. We think you should go see a doctor. And recently, I think about a year ago, on like one of Apple's keynotes, they showed videos of their users saying like, look, you saved me or my dad from dying. I got myself checked out when the watch showed me that I had this irregular heart rate, and it saved them thousands and thousands of dollars in healthcare fees. So the future's getting there. Now it's just trying to figure out how do we make this even more accessible, and like what other new things and neat tricks we can figure out from our own body to aid this kind of progress.
You heard it from the expert. Prevention is better than cure. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to High Exclusive, where we're here with Raveen Kariyawasam. So where we left off before, we were talking about preventative healthcare. Now, I understand that you've also received several research grants from various institutions that actually have benefited Sri Lanka and the Philippines. How do you think a low-cost medical record system will benefit Sri Lanka?
Yeah, so there are multiple ways an electronic medical record system would help a country like ours. Starting off from like the macroscopic scale, firstly, everything, regardless of a field or profession you're in, you understand that data drives most insights. So by having an electronic medical record system, we can, within the first couple of years, we can collect data and understand how the country's health as a whole is functioning in terms of do we have seasonal diseases, are there particular medications that we end up using in one season versus another, are there particular regions where a certain ailment is more common, so then we can start to look at environmental factors and see, is it the water supply, is it the food that's natively grown in that area. So there's a lot that can be done with the data that's driven by the system. The other thing that we could potentially do with an electronic medical record system is that you as a patient, you don't have to carry those hefty files with all those prescriptions and reports only to be turned back from the doctor saying, look, you bought me the wrong report, I didn't ask for this is too old, I can't do anything. Whereas everything is now on demand anytime. So this could make consultations much faster. You don't have to wait 45 minutes in a waiting room hoping that you get to your third spot. So that would be a life send, and a lot more people can get seen and screened through the healthcare system. And we have a free healthcare system too. So by doing this, what we can do is alleviate the pressure on existing resources and get more efficiency and throughput using our current system. And then finally, it's leading towards that future aspect I was talking to you about earlier, personalized healthcare. Now the data is now yours. Like you yourself, you can look at your phone and say, okay, I have these results. The phone's telling me in a simplified manner, this is what high cholesterol means. And like you can actively take charge of your health and not depend on nurses and doctors solely for advice or burden them with unnecessary questions, because now you have the knowledge and power in your hand. And you can help the healthcare system alongside nurses and physicians and whoever to get more done.
Okay, sounds very interesting and very complicated to a science newbie like me. Let's talk a bit about your hobbies, shall we say. You're a DJ, a graphic designer, vice president of the Honors Biology Society, and student health tech ambassador. I think the question that we all have is, where do you find the time? I mean, when I was in university, I had time to like party and sleep, and that was it. Please enlighten us.
Yeah, of course. I have no secret. It's just that I do all my partying on the weekend and then keep all Monday to Friday for work. No, I wish it was that simple. I guess I was really fortunate enough to make a set of really good friends. Shout out to Dialog Ch if you're watching. You guys got me through a bunch of stuff. Like having a good network of friends means that you can get work done together. You can split stuff up. Life is like a marathon. You're not always like you can't always sprint to the end. You gotta take it slow. You gotta stay back. You gotta hydrate, and like hanging out with friends is really important, and making sure you have a core support group that'll get you through the tough times. and more specifically for the technical details, because I know you guys really want to know how I do it, use your calendar app on your phone and like literally block out time for everything. That's what I did. I literally blocked out time for like when I would eat, I'd be like, oh, I'm eating for 1 hour. And then I always had a to-do list. Like I didn't want to get up in the morning wondering like what I wanted to do. I always knew I had to knock these things out so that after 6 p.m. I kind of keep like a free window. Like after 6 p.m. I'm not gonna touch any work. After that, it's like fun, free stuff. So if somebody sends me a party invite or we're going clubbing or whatever, I have time for the spontaneous events. And productivity experts call that like a buffer zone. So you know within these working hours, you had to get everything done, and you kind of had like a little bit of a fudge ratio. So if you think something takes about an hour, you schedule in 2. So you know you're gonna get it done within that time block. And you have all these free, expansive time slots where if something spills over, you can like, you know what, I have time tomorrow, I'll deal with it. I'm not gonna compromise my time spending out, going out with friends.
I feel like that's a lot of useful information for all of us watching. So is it safe to assume that you would have a career in music and the arts if you weren't into science?
Oh, very much so. I think it could have been a thing because I come from a very creative family, Anarchy. Both my parents are architects, my uncles are in printing and design. So we always had paint and paint brushes everywhere. You catch me drawing on the walls as like a 2-year-old, and nobody yelled at me because it was an artsy-fartsy household. So I think it possibly could have happened. And music, the DJing, oh, so addictive. It's fun going out and playing and being like the life of the party. But I also do think like science and engineering is kind of also like art in a way, because you're creating something out of nothing and you're kind of expressing these thoughts that you have. Like, you know, you want to get action X done, so you have to come up with a mechanism that gets it done. So it's kind of like you expressing your thoughts and feelings, like you strongly feel towards getting something done, and therefore you make something, right? So that's how I kind of see engineering too. I kind of see it as like an art form. So yes, I could have been an artist and musician, but I also feel like I'm not losing out, you know?
True. So on that note, what message do you have to give to aspiring scientists and thinkers who want to make a change in the world? Yeah,
so for everyone who's listening at home, I think the biggest advice I've ever gotten is you have to understand that the world is unfair, but you gotta keep trying and you gotta keep getting back up on your feet, because at the end of the day, Anaki, hard work beats talent when talent slacks off, right? So everyone is capable of making a thoughtful, impactful change in the environment. You just got to make sure and think, how am I going to do it? If there's anything going to stop me, am I going to get myself back up and keep going? And one final bonus tidbit is believe in something called luck potential. If you get an opportunity which scares you and honestly puts you out of your comfort zone, take it. That means you're going to meet new people, and that's going to put you on a new trajectory you didn't know was possible, and that's how you end up being successful. You know, it's not just hard work, there's also luck involved, so make sure you get both.
And I think it's very important that you pointed out the difference between talent and hard work, because a lot of us youngsters who are in our 20s, we kind of tend to get mixed up and think like, okay, no, talent is what matters, not hard work. It's a very common Sri Lankan thinking, I believe. So thank you for clearing that up to us.
Yeah, and there's a great book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell that kind of shows, like, if you look at the Canadian ice hockey team, everyone in the Canadian ice hockey team who's gone pro, they were born in the first 4 months of the year, and anyone who was born towards the last 4 months of the year, they were kind of disadvantaged, because when you're in middle school, high school, when you're going through puberty, the kids who were born earlier, biologically, they mature faster, so they run faster. So they get scouted out better fast when compared to the kids who were born towards the end of the academic year. So that's where like the luck component pays, you know. So, but you should always, maybe if you took an opportunity where the scouts come in at a different time period, maybe you end up in a pro team too. So never say no to new opportunities, you know.
Read your books, people. With that, we'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to High Exclusive, where we are here with Raveen Kariyawasam, who has managed to score one of possibly the most hardest scholarships to gain in the world. Raveen, you're also very passionate about giving back to the community. Tell us a little bit about how you do so and why you think it's important.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was in college, one of the biggest issues is I felt like, even I think in Sri Lanka, is that there is an information asymmetry. There are people who have wonderful things to say, but they don't have a platform to talk about it. And the people who want to listen don't know that these things are there to be said. So while I was at Penn, I used to be on the executive board for a club called the Wharton Undergraduate Healthcare Club, where we would bring down Fortune 500 CEOs, and I would like personally help organize these talks with these like billionaires who just take like 2 hours out of their hefty schedule, fly into Philadelphia and sit down in a table just like this with 10, 12 kids who are willing to show up and talk about life. And part of the reason I did this is I wanted to kind of like destigmatize the journey of success. Like, we idolize all these CEOs, these billionaires, but the truth is they were kind of like kids like us, you know, they did stupid stuff. And I needed my fellow peers to hear that, to know that they too could be in these ranks. There's nothing stopping them. So I started organizing these talks. We recorded them, put them out there on websites, on YouTube, so that the wider community in Philadelphia internationally can listen to it and kind of like understand what it means to, what kind of classes did CEOs take, like what kind of stupid stuff were they up to, and they talked about like how most of their journey is also kind of attributed to success, and that they were in the right place at the right time. And these are things people need to hear, because otherwise everyone around the world thinks you got to be perfect, you got to be this, you got to be that to be the greatest of all time. But this kind of humanizes the whole journey of being successful and defining what success truly means to you. That, I think, was how I kind of gave back to society. But if you were talking about like other things, like on a more physical kind of attribute level, I guess like I also spend a lot of my time organizing tutorials and like trying to teach people on how to get into colleges in America, how do you get into an Ivy League like I did. And especially in Sri Lanka, I would go back to CIS, I would give people my number. Anyone who ever needed any help, they could call me, I'd go through the S's and stuff, and kind of give back to the people the same way they gave to me when I needed it.
That's wonderful to hear. You know, talking about humanization now, there's all this content floating around on social media about cold showers at 5 a.m. in the morning and then running on coffee and no sleep. People probably assume that you do that too, and you work or study like 24/7. How do you maintain a work-life balance?
So I get asked that question quite a lot. Part of the reason why I don't like telling people what I do is, and they're like, "Oh, Raveen, aren't you a robot? Like, do you live in the library?" I'm like, heck no. So how do I maintain my work-life balance? I mean, there was a time in my life I was always being like a productivity hack guru kind of thing, because like it was ingrained in my head that, look, we all have 24 hours. Like, why is Jeff Bezos a multi-billionaire and I'm not? Like, we both have the same number of hours. Like, what is he doing that I'm not? And I got in the whole rabbit hole of cold showers at 5 in the morning and all that. But it quickly became apparent that you kind of define your own lifestyle and you define what's successful. So it's important for you to take time back for yourself and kind of regenerate, because we're not machines, we're not computers. There's a reason why we're better than computers, and that is to connect with the people around us, the environment, and step back, because after all, we work to live, not live to work. So in terms of like maintaining that work-life balance, I've always told myself, look, and it took me a while to get to this point, but I always told myself, look, if push comes to shove, you always have to pick yourself. Doesn't matter what responsibilities you have. Doesn't matter who's depending on you. If you fall apart and if you break down, there's no point in doing all the things you've done. So I make it an absolute point where I literally put on my schedule movie time with friends, and I'm like, I'm off, my Slack is off, my messages are off. You can't reach me unless like it's urgent. And like spend time with the people that matter, and like watering the relationships I want to keep going.
So the temperatures of your showers really don't matter?
Not one bit.
Harsh reality. No. So, you know, you've become more or less an unofficial ambassador for Sri Lanka through your work and studies. What do you do to show your Lankan pride?
Oh, 100%. The food. Sri Lanka has some of the most exquisite food out there. Funny story, actually. One time I was like, first year I was so homesick, and there were no Sri Lankan restaurants around me in Philadelphia at all. And I convinced all my friends to be like, hey, we're going on a bus to New York to eat. And they got on a bus, we went all the way to New York, we went to this restaurant called Sigiri, we waited in line for 2 hours, we ate kottu and lamprice and came back, and everyone there loved me for it. It was a 6-hour journey in total. We had to walk around New York. It was 2 hours to get there by bus, 2 hours to come back. But to this day, it was the best road trip we've ever taken, and people still love the Sri Lankan food. And now, if you ask a lot of my friends in the US, a lot of Koreans, Japanese, Chinese, Americans, they'll all come up to you and probably be like, Raveen's paripu is the best paripu they've ever had. So I cook a lot for my friends. I host like these big dinners where I get everyone in. I'm like, oh, this is stuff like from back home. This is what my mom sent. This is kitul. We have it with Greek yogurt. Try it. It's kind of like buffalo curd. And they love it, you know. And food, I found, is like a wonderful way of connecting people together. And that's one way I show my Sri Lankan pride, because let's be honest, there's no other cuisine like Sri Lankan food. I'm pretty sure you know that too. And like my craving for kottu at like 4 in the morning in like one of the Philadelphia streets is immense, you know. And I always do that. And the other thing is I always make sure to bring souvenirs from Sri Lanka to highlight what's amazing about our little country, whether it be the spices, the cinnamon, the tea. And without a doubt, Anuki, to this day, if you ask most of my professors, they'll tell you Ceylon tea is the best tea they've ever had, and they've all converted. They've taken down my email. They're like, Raveen, we're going to ask for a refill every year. So yeah, that's how I've been doing it.
Food definitely heals the soul, I think.
Definitely.
So lastly, the big question, what does the future hold for you? It seems like you've accomplished so much at such a young age. Where do you see your life going?
That is the big question, isn't it? It is a question I ask myself every day too. I wouldn't be here without my parents, my teachers, my mentors, and I've been very blessed to have wonderful friends and relatives who've gotten me to this point. And I'm not gonna say there was no privilege. Privilege played a part into it, but what I can promise you, Anuki, is that even though I don't know what the future holds for me right now, I can promise you that it's going to be giving back to Sri Lanka, the community, the country, the motherland that nurtured me and brought me up to this place. And going forward, anything I do is come back to this country and to help and improve and make Sri Lanka a shining beacon for the rest of the world to emulate.
Well, wonderful talking to you, Raveen.
Thank you, Anuki.
You are definitely a character to keep an eye on. With that, we come to the end of this episode of High Exclusive. Stay tuned for next time.